a lot of very significant developments coming out of Israel. Let's go ahead and put this first image up on the screen. This is some video that was released by the Houthis of a hypersonic missile that they are calling Palestine 2. They are claiming that this is the missile that hit the outskirts of Tel Aviv on Saturday. So you can see it there, an indication, they're trying to flex their muscle and prove to be a significant threat to the population of Israel. Let's go ahead and put the next piece up on the screen. This is from the Washington Post talking about this attack. The headline here, Houthis fire missile from Yemen into central Israel, warn of more strikes. In the report, they say they claimed responsibility for a surface-to-surface missile attacking central Israel on Sunday morning, marking a continued escalation between the Iranian-backed group and Israel. It caused no direct injuries, though they did respond with emergency services and treated 9 people who were injured on their way to shelters after sirens sounded. The Houthi military spokesman described it as a hypersonic ballistic missile targeting military operations. The IDF said in a statement the missile was hit by an interceptor, as a result of which the target fragmented but was not destroyed. In that same article from the Washington Post, they also had another piece of significant news, which is that the IDF is now actually admitting that it was their airstrikes that killed 3 different hostages back in November. This is something that had been long suspected, but now, long after the fact, they're finally acknowledging that this is actually the case. But Saagar, with regard to the Houthis really trying to up the ante here and demonstrating some more sophisticated weaponry. Obviously, this raises the stakes for Israel in terms of their prosecution of this continued war.
Yeah, this is scary. I mean, look, I don't know whether it was actually hypersonic or any of that. I don't know the actual technical details, but you should not dismiss this as deeply unstable in the system, because what it means is that they have a much more important capability that may not be as easily defeated by even the United States or all the other countries that intervened last time around, and that if they wanted, they could quite easily use it to inflict a lot more damage than we've seen previously. I tracked a lot of this stuff during North Korea and the development of their own nuclear missiles and their ICBMs capable of hitting the United States, and everyone, there's constantly just a want to just be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, you don't understand what this really means for the overall strategic picture. Part of why, accepting and trying to create a peace negotiation with them was so important. And that's what I see as vital here, is that this really does actually change the game, not only in terms of U.S. assets in the region and our own even ability to, fight something like this, where we've bombed them several times. We've spent billions of dollars trying to stop this. It hasn't actually worked all that well.
Yep.
And then for Israel itself, look, hopefully, eventually they will become responsible entirely for their own security. And if they do, this is exactly what would pose like real existential threats to them.
Yeah, and the Houthis went out of their way to say, hey, we have the technology to be able to evade your Iron Dome interceptors. So this, sense that you're only able to inflict damage in one direction, we are going to put that at jeopardy and attempt to impose a greater cost on you and on your country. At the same time, this has gone, relatively unnoticed in the U.S. press, but there are extraordinary developments in terms of the Israeli War Cabinet and their stated clear desire to escalate the war in Lebanon. We can put this up on the screen. So Netanyahu is apparently considering strongly, and reports indicate very likely, to fire his defense chief, Yoav Gallant. Now, and replace him with a more far-right figure who has been vehemently opposed to any sort of a hostage deal. So, Yoav Gallant is also facing likely International Criminal Court indictments. He is also obviously a war criminal. He has said some absolutely heinous things about Palestinians, some criminal things about Palestinians, including, he's the one who announced we're going to treat them like animals. We're going to cut off all the food, water, etc. But he has been a voice inside the cabinet that has been receptive to the idea of at least having a ceasefire and a hostage deal. So Yoav Gallant, reportedly, according to Haaretz, is at least somewhat opposed to a massive widening of the war into Lebanon and a huge escalation there vis-a-vis Hezbollah. And that appears to be the, triggering dissent that is leading Netanyahu to consider firing him and just wholly embracing and publicly embracing this further right figure who, again, called a hostage deal, quote, surrender. There's a pro-hostage group that said that appointing this far right figure would represent a, quote, death sentence for the hostages and a complete abandonment of those in captivity. And let me put this one next piece up on the screen before I get your reaction, Saagar. This is from the New York Times. This is Haaretz. But the New York Times also had this reporting that, the U.S. is meeting with Gallant, meeting with Netanyahu, and they're saying, hey, we don't want this wider war in Lebanon, guys. Don't do it. We don't want you to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And Netanyahu was just like, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do whatever it takes. He wants to officially expand the war goals to include this, escalation vis-a-vis Lebanon. So once again, similar to the Ukraine situation, we see a conflict we're directly engaged in, that we're funding, that we're arming, et cetera, that is spiraling in escalatory directions that the U.S. president is supposedly opposed to, but utterly unwilling to do anything to forestall this very dangerous direction.
It is a problem, and it is exactly, we take our eye off the ball, and there's still crazy developments that are happening. We're not that far away from the anniversary of October 7th and everything that's happened there, and the instability inside the Israeli cabinet have major effects for all of us. Also, none of the political leaders that we have are really all of that concerned about constraining any of this. And so in both cases, we either have one party or the other who is default allowing things like this that cannot go. You can't put it all back in the box. We're seeing one of our producers just sent us a story this morning. It appears there was some major Israeli operation against a bunch of Hezbollah terrorists inside of Lebanon, where it looks like their pagers exploded. It's literally like something out of science fiction. That's what I'm just taking a look at. So I don't have all of the details. The point, though, is that stuff like this inside of Lebanon just continues the spiral. And the only question is how much of the cost of this are we going to bear? And we generally know the answer to that. Almost 100% that we will pay for it.
Yeah. We're coming up on almost a year here, and no one's even really talking about a ceasefire deal anymore. It's just collapsed. It's off the table. And there was maybe a week or so ago, there were these reports about there was some debate within the Biden administration, should we still keep trying with the ceasefire deal, or should we just basically give up? Because Bibi very clearly does not want a ceasefire deal. And the whole thing is so utterly absurd and pathetic. If you are the United States of America, you are the American president. If you want a ceasefire deal, all you have to do is stop shipping the bombs that enable this continued direction. So instead of that, they're just putting it again on autopilot, where we're just continue to ship bombs that are used to slaughter, annihilate, and destroy with ever broadening horizons. There have been multiple threats that Beirut's going to be turned into Gaza throughout the course of this war. And we're unwilling to change course or do anything to stop this slide in this direction. And, it's horrifying on a moral dimension. It's terrifying on a just national security dimension.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.